they're thinking, I need to find what's next faster. And then you want to ask yourself, is this a door or is this an engine?
I love that answer.
You have to ask yourself, what's the point of building something if you can't maintain it?
When is the time to change? I think that's it. What's up, guys? Welcome to the On Track with Annie podcast. Make sure before you listen to this episode to give this podcast a rating and review. Give it 5 stars. It really helps us out. Today's guest is Jason Feifer. Jason Feifer is the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, a podcast host, book author, keynote speaker, startup advisor, and nonstop optimism machine. His goal is to help you become more resilient and adaptable in a world of constant change so you can seize new opportunity before anyone else does. He has a new book out called Build for Tomorrow, which I will put in the description below. And let's get into the episode. Let's welcome Jason. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I already gave you a short little intro. I know that we're short on time today, so I want to get right into it. So how are you doing today? Are you in Colorado, by the way?
No, I'm in Brooklyn. I spend a lot of time in Colorado, but I'm in Brooklyn right now. I like the Samsung Q2U, just holding it like you're rocking it on stage.
Wow, yeah, you know all about it. I love this microphone.
Yeah, it's a great microphone.
It makes me feel like I hold the power, so I like it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what you do. So you work with Entrepreneur Magazine. You have several books out. So the first thing I kind of want to ask you is, what is the most common thing that you see successful entrepreneurs do or not do?
Well,
let's go both ways.
Let's go both ways. The most common thing that I see successful entrepreneurs do is see change as opportunity. Mm-hmm. This is something that I write a lot about, so maybe this is predictable for anyone who knows me, but I have found that the most successful people have this ability to understand that the things that they're doing today cannot be the things that they're going to do tomorrow, or that's going to make them a success tomorrow. And so there's something scary, yes, but also exciting to them about seeing new opportunity, about understanding that something has to change and then figuring out what that is. It's not like they're not afraid of change. Everyone is afraid of change. It's that they utilize that change differently. I think a lot of people use I'm sorry. Whatever. I'm not sure. I'm like, sometimes you talk and you're like, did I use the right words? So I'm just going to go back and say, in case it's not like they fear change. Everyone fears change. It's just that they use that fear differently. A lot of people use fear as a way to go backwards, to say, I'm losing something, and so I need to figure out how to hold on to it. There's another way to think about fear, though, and that is to think, I'm afraid that I won't find the new solution fast enough. It's there, but will I find it? And I find that a lot of incredible, successful entrepreneurs tend to be the kinds of people who are thinking not, I need to preserve what used to be, but rather they're thinking, I need to find what's next faster. And that propels them. To the other part of your question, what do they do too often? The flip side of my answer would be that they hold on to their original idea too closely, that they're anchored to their original vision or the way of doing something, or they don't let enough other voices into the room. And as a result, they often miss what the real opportunity is.
So when is it time to change? I think that's like a big thing for a lot of people, where you're like, okay, they hold on to it for too long. Yes. But when is it actually time to make the change and the adjustment?
Well, look, that's going to be different for every person in every circumstance, but here's a little exercise that I really love that I picked up from my friends Jordan and Adam Bornstein. They have a consultancy called Pen Name Consulting, and this is something they run their clients through. It is to ask of every change that you see coming. First of all, you should not be waiting for it to arrive on your doorstep. You should be looking and evaluating and seeing what's coming. And then you want to ask yourself, is this a door or is this an engine? And the metaphor goes like this. If you were driving down the street in Brooklyn, where I am right now, if you're driving down the street in Brooklyn and your door falls off of your car, can you still drive the car? Yes, but you should get that fixed. I mean, it's not good to be driving around without a door, but you can still drive the car. You can get where you need to go. If you're driving down the street in Brooklyn and the engine falls off the car, can you still drive? No, car's dead. Every change is a door or an engine. right? Which is to say every change requires some kind of adjusting, but some of it is small adjustments and some of it is large. And the thing that we really need to train ourselves to do is to go through the rigorous process of figuring out, am I seeing something that's coming to me that's an engine? Because if it is, I need to react to it now, not before it reaches me, but now. Change before you must, so that you are still in control, so that you can control the timeline. If you wait for things to come to you, then at that point, you're just scrambling. And then if you identify a door, this change in my business is going to require some kind of adjustment, some new way of talking to people, something. Well, that's great. Work on that. You should. It's not really a question of whether or not we should take things seriously. It's often a question of how seriously we should take it.
I love that answer.
Thank
And
you.
I think too, people don't know the difference between the engine, the door, and when to make that adjustment. I think that's the main issue with people is they just wait too long and they're like, my situation is fine. It's fine for now. And then it's not fine. And then like
Yeah.
what you said, they're scrambling and they're like, shit, what do I do next?
Yeah.
So what do you think when it comes to passion and what you're good at? Because I think a lot of people do chase passion, but I hear a lot of the times that maybe you can have passions, but it doesn't need to be your full career. Maybe you need to do what you're good at. So what do you think the difference is with that? Like, what do you see successful entrepreneurs going after?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about that. And a lot of the conventional wisdom is don't chase your passion, because being engaged with your passion doesn't necessarily mean that you're engaged in a good business. I think that you need to zoom out a little bit more and put your passion and what you're good at, just take them both, into a broader context. So I find that one of the most powerful things that any individual or company can do is to identify a mission statement. And I don't mean in the way in which you just like find a nice phrase to stick on the wall so that employees feel good. I mean, you should have a short phrase in which every word is carefully selected because it is not anchored to something that is easily changeable. Right? It's the difference between me saying, I'm a magazine editor, and me saying ceases to function. I'm not a magazine editor anymore. They can take it away from me. I tell stories in my own voice. Well, that's different. You can't take that away from me. I tell stories. It could be any kind of stories, newspaper stories, magazine stories, talking on podcasts, books, speaking on stage. In my own voice, it's just me setting the terms for how I want to operate at this stage in my career. The more that I understand that, the more that I can start to put things in context. And this took me a long time to get to. What was I passionate about? I used to think I was passionate about newspapers. That's where I started. Then I thought I was passionate about magazines. I'm not passionate about either of those things. I'm passionate about storytelling, right? And those things fit inside of storytelling. And as I discovered, so many other things do. So now that I understand that, what I've created for myself is a far broader sandbox to play in, and also the ability to recognize new opportunities as they come. Because if I narrowly define myself, I'm a magazine editor. Well, then if someone came along and said, hey, I think that you'd make a bunch of money if you stood on stage and gave keynotes, I would say, but that doesn't have anything to do with magazine editing. And maybe that sounds obvious, but people do that kind of thing all the time. I mean, when I career counsel people, they're often telling me about the things that they can't do. Why? Why? Just broaden your definition of what it is that you do and understand the context in which you think your passions lie. And what you'll find is that actually there are way more opportunities than you think. You're narrowly defining yourself. And the same is true for companies, right? Am I a company that makes donuts, or am I a company that brings people joy? It's a very, very different way of operating your business, depending on the answer to that question. And I would always lean towards the broader definition. And I think that if you do that, then you start to recognize where real opportunities are.
I like that because I think a lot of people go after niche, but then when you kind of zoom out, like what you said, you can have that niche, but then like, what are the branches of that niche that you could go off and do? And that's when you start thinking about it a little bit differently. So, and I think as entrepreneurs also, we're always thinking about the next thing, right? Our brains are constantly running. We can never shut our brains off, and it's kind of an issue. And on a side note, there's a thing about 4-day work weeks and the importance of it. And what do you think about that? Constantly working as an entrepreneur or having something like a 4-day work week and kind of taking time off?
Well, I love the experiments that are happening right now in how and where and when we work. And it's wonderful. It's a conversation that should have happened a long time ago, and it's a conversation that will continue. Is the 4-day work week right for everybody in every company? No. Is hybrid work correct for every company and every person? No. But that's the wonderful thing about what we're doing right now, is we're going to find solutions that meet our specific needs rather than saying there's only one way to do something. So that's great. But to your broader question about work-life balance, I'll tell you an interesting conversation that I had with a book author. I interviewed her when she was a book author. She has since become a friend. I mean, she's still a book author, but and now I understand her in a different context. And her name is Catherine Morgan Schaffler. She wrote a book called The Perfectionist's Guide to Losing Control. And when the book came out, she's a psychotherapist. I was interviewing her about, she had proposed a conversation about how to redefine our understanding of productivity, because we often understand productivity to be about tasks and time. How many tasks can I fit into the allotted amount of time? And she said, look, that's fine. That's one way of doing it. But the thing is that if you only focus on tasks, what you're ultimately going to do is you're going to burn yourself out trying to accomplish all the tasks. You will run out of energy to actually do the tasks. So what if we think about productivity differently? What if we think about productivity as not just time management, but energy management, in which anything that we do that maintains and restores our energy so that we can put that energy towards tasks or whatever else is going to bring us joy in our lives is productive. So taking a walk can be productive. Getting coffee with a friend can be productive. Sleeping in sometimes is productive. It's an interesting way of thinking about it. And I said to her, well, I love that way of thinking, but what do you say to an entrepreneur who is listening and saying, that's cool, but I have 12 hours worth of tasks to do in the next day, and I only have 8 hours to do them. What am I supposed to do? And she said to me, and this is a question I have asked myself ever since, she said, you have to ask yourself, what's the point of building something if you can't maintain it? And as soon as she said it, I realized there's no point. There's no point to that. And you ask a great question. Entrepreneurs can't turn their minds off. We're constantly working. Where's the balance? And I think the answer is that we have to think about why we're spending the time and energy in the way that we're spending it. Sometimes we're going to have to grind. It's just true. And the problem that we have isn't a question of working too hard on something. You can work really hard on something for a long time if you really love it. The question is, do you know what you're building? And it's okay to sprint really hard if what you're doing is getting to a place that's sustainable. But if you have no idea how you're building a sustainable thing, then this sprint is endless and you are going to run out of energy. And the second that you do that, you are not going to be able to complete any more of those tasks.
That is such an interesting way to put it. I think the goal too, is thinking about what is the life that you want to create. Are you building this thing for extra freedom, which I think is the main answer to a lot of people's to that question, is they want freedom. They want to be able to have more time in their lives to do what they want to do. Mm-hmm. But if it's a constant sprint, you can't even do that. So then what's the point? That's the time to change, like what you said, when we kind of asked, when is the time to change? I think that's it. And when to pivot, if you're starting to feel burned out or you're doing too much, it's time to take a chill pill and maybe take a 4-day work week, like kind of what we talked about.
And it's helpful to think about your goals. What are you building towards? What do you ultimately want? I mean, I've gone through this shift myself. Catherine's question really helped me put to words some of the things that I was feeling myself. But I pride myself on being able to do a lot. I do a lot. Editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, write books, articles, newsletter, podcasts, speaking. I got 2 kids. I do, and there's more. And I do a lot. And I think that's awesome. That I am able to do all that. Then go. But I did start to think, what's the point of building something if you can't maintain it? What's the point of all this? Like, why am I doing all this? Just to do it? Or is it to get to a place where I can feel like I created something stable for myself and a good understanding of myself and my work, and now I can enjoy a little bit more. I can enjoy the things I worked for. And so something I've been trying to do a lot is to shorten my day. I will try to schedule, particularly I really like the hours of 4 to 6. By 4 p.m., if you've been working hard, you don't have anything left in your brain. I don't. So why don't I, at least a couple times a week, try to find someone to catch up with from like 4 to 6 p.m., go out, get coffee, walk around the park, something. I found that nurtures my relationships, which makes my life happier. And also, frankly, relationships are good for work too. And it just allows me to sit down the next day and not feel burnt out and spend some more time building the things that I love.
Do you take advantage of different softwares, AI, to help you do tasks to give yourself more time, like ChatGPT and stuff like that?
Not yet. I think we're in such.
I want to hear on your views that
of AI,
of the ChatGPT and AI. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, here are my views on that stuff. I was hired, it might have been a year ago at this point, to speak at a conference of lawyers. It was a regional law firm had me fly out to San Francisco and talk to their lawyers. And I talked about change and adaptability. And then in the Q&A session, all the lawyers' questions were about ChatGPT, which was fascinating. I didn't expect it. And afterwards, I went to the CEO of this law firm and I said, so interesting that all your attorneys want to talk about is ChatGPT. And he said, they wouldn't say this out loud, but I'll tell you what they're really concerned about, what's driving all those questions. And that is that they're afraid that ChatGPT is going to make motion writing, the act of writing motions, legal motions, more efficient. And that's a problem for lawyers because lawyers work on billable hours. And so their work they don't want their work to become more efficient. And I said, well, that's fantastic, isn't it? Like, and not in like an anti-lawyer way, but like, here's what's amazing about that. So lawyers are working on billable hours. You know who likes billable hours? Literally 0 people. Like nobody likes billable hours, right? Clients don't like billable hours. Lawyers really hate billable hours. It's the system they're operating in, but nobody likes it. It doesn't make any sense. This is an incredibly expensive and very important, it's depending on the circumstance, professional service being provided. And we're paying for it by the hour or like by the 15-minute because somebody sent me an email. It's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense. But there's never been an incentive for a law firm to say, you know what? We don't like billable hours. We're going to come up with a different system. It would have just been weird. People would have thought something was wrong. But now ChatGPT is going to make that work more efficient, which means that billable hours isn't going to make as much sense anymore, which means that somebody is now incentivized to figure out a better solution. And so that's what I said to him. And he said, that's exactly right. And that's why we just hired a head of AI to figure out how to use these tools for us. And we started to talk about, well, what happens if motion writing becomes more efficient? Well, it's not like you just go lay off the lawyers. Now you have more human capital available. What are you going to do with it? Well, if motion writing just became more efficient, then legal work might have just become a little cheaper, which means that you can now expand who you serve, because right now all you're serving are top paying clients. But what if you can move down the ladder and you can start serving people who aren't able to afford what you're currently offering, but maybe they can afford something else? You actually expand services, you expand your business, you make more business, not less business. So all of this is to say, if you think about the billable hour situation, billable hours was broken. It was broken. We have a system right now that we have kept around, but it's broken. And now ChatGPT is going to break what's already broken so that we can build something better. And I think that around the business and life ecosystem, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see AI not going around replacing perfect things, but instead breaking things that are functionally already broken, that we've just kept around because nobody was incentivized to figure out a better way to do it. And now there will be a better way to do it. It's really, really early days. So at this point, I think I see everything that's happening in AI is basically somebody's experiment. I haven't found anything that makes my life measurably more successful, but again, it's super early days. Well, the one thing is I have this newsletter called One Thing Better that I put out every week. You can find it at onethingbetter.email. It's a web address, onethingbetter.email. And the illustrations in there, I use DALL-E 2 to produce the illustrations. Nice. And I guess there's somebody out there who's like, well, but isn't that replacing illustrators? But no, because I wasn't paying illustrators before. right? But now I'm able to add a little more value. I don't think that this actually subtracts anything, that I think that it adds. And I'm excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, and it's great for entrepreneurs, I think, as well, expanding their business and trying to figure out how to do things easier.
Yeah,
So
without question.
I did something. I went on ChatGPT and I looked up "would you rather" questions.
Okay.
So we're gonna see what they came up with. They're business related. You can answer them however you'd like.
Great.
So the
Fun.
first thing is: would you rather pivot your existing business to adapt to a changing market, or start a new venture from scratch?
Oh. I think it depends on the environment in which your business is operating, right? If I was the last great buggy whip manufacturer, maybe it was time to start a new business instead of pivot. But I think it depends.
Okay. Would you rather have a product with a loyal niche following, or a product with a mass appeal but more competition?
Loyal niche following.
Okay.
That's I live in loyal niche following.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Would you rather invest heavily in marketing and risk overspending, or take a conservative approach and potentially miss out on growth opportunities?
Probably depends on how much money you've raised. If you're a bootstrapper, and also if you just think the way that I do, then you approach things conservatively. That's how I've always done it. I'm thinking about what money am I making before I'm thinking about what money I'm spending.
Good point. Would you rather sell your successful business for a significant profit, or keep running it and potentially earn more over time?
I think that this is a conversation that is more and more going to be happening among founders. For me, for me, it would be keep for the long term. That's how I would operate. I'm not a grow and sell kind of person, but teach their own.
When growth happens, I guess it's when you want to sell. Would you rather have a pet dragon or a robot with AI?
A robot with AI. Pet dragon sounds terrible. That is a fire hazard. That's not going to work out well for you at all.
It could be cool. I mean, you could teach it some cool tricks. I don't know.
The cool trick is burning down your house. I mean, here's the thing: like, that dragon just has to mess up once. Have you ever had a pet that has a 100% success rate on everything that it does? No. If you get a puppy, it's going to poop in the corner. If you get a baby dragon, it's going to burn your house down. So no. This is like when people get monkeys and then they discover, and then they discover that when the monkey grows up, it becomes incredibly aggressive, and also it is way stronger than you. Like, don't get a monkey.
I've seen videos of that. It's ridiculous. All right, one more question. Would you rather have to communicate only in animal sounds or an interpretive dance?
Animal sounds. Interpretive dance drives me crazy. I don't understand interpretive dance at all. I feel like I could at least figure out animal sounds.
Can you dance?
I mean, not anything that people would define as dancing. I can move my body.
There we go. That's a start.
Yeah.
All right. So I think ChatGPT is great for those types of questions. The would you rathers.
That was great. ChatGPT did great. Here's a fun thing. If you have any, if there's any amount of information about you online such that ChatGPT could figure out who you are. So it won't make judgments. You can't ask why is Jason Feifer awesome? It will not answer that question. I tried, but it will offer information, so you can reframe it and ask, why do other people think Jason Feifer is awesome? And then it'll answer it, which is really fun.
Way.
So but it'll it won't get it perfect, right? You'll see some of the hallucinations. Like when I did it, it had a lot correct about me, but some was incorrect. It's fun. These are imperfect tools, but they're amazing.
That's awesome. All right, so we're out of time. Tell me a little bit about your book and where they can find it and everything about you.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, the book is called Build for Tomorrow, and you can find it on audiobook or ebook or hardcover, every format except for Stone Tablet. And it's called Build for Tomorrow. It is a guide to adaptability and resilience. My goal is to give you a roadmap to find new opportunities in times of change. So if you're going through any kind of change in work or life, this book can really help you find what's next and make the most of it. And then also I have that newsletter, which I told you about, which is called One Thing Better. You can find that at onethingbetter.email. Each week, one way to improve your work and build a career or company you love.
Amazing. I will put all of it in the description below. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.